Hey guys, today I'm going to introduce you to the JavaScript document object model, better known as the DOM, and we're just going to be using a little bit of CSS, HTML, and mostly JavaScript here. So let's get started. So here, I'm going to do Shift-1 Enter to create my emmet, and then I'm going to right-click and open with Live Server. If you guys don't have the Live Server extension, you want to download it from the extensions here. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of HTML, so we're going to have a main tag with a section. In our section, we're just going to have a p tag, and we're going to just have some text here. So we're just going to say, hello world. And this p tag is going to have an ID of text, a class of text, and a name of text. And let's give it a little bit of styling here. So in our main tag, we are going to give a background color of 333, a text color of EEE, margin of 20%, and a padding of 10 pixels. And let's link the CSS file. Okay, so just a little bit of styling. Let's also link our JavaScript file. And I'll need to create one. Oh, I should probably already have one created. Let's see. Yeah, I just called it in index.js. Okay, so let's open up our JavaScript file. Okay, so the first thing about the DOM is you need to understand how to grab HTML elements. So I'm going to just have a comment for each and everything we talk about here. So first thing is grabbing an HTML element. There are many ways you can do this. So the first, I'm going to teach you guys the more common ways and what would be used in most cases. So the first thing is we're going to say get element by ID. And getting the element by the ID means we're going to grab, using this ID, we're going to grab this HTML tag right here. So if we do, let's create a variable called p, and let's say document.get element by ID, and in here you just type in the ID that you gave it. Okay, so now if we console.log p, you should see the p tag. There you go. So we see the p tag. There are so many ways that we can grab this HTML tag. So that's document.get element by ID. Let me show you. Okay, so here I'm just going to have a global variable p. That'll be better instead of having to recreate it every time. And I'm always going to have console.log p as well. So now I'm going to show you get elements by class. So we can do p is equal to document.get element by class name, and in here we just simply give the class that we gave it, which is also text. If we console.log, we see that we get an HTML collection. Well, what is this HTML collection? So whenever you do get elements by class name, it's going to grab any tag that has a class of text. It'll grab all of them. So let me show you, for example. Let's say I had another p tag and also gave it a class of text. Well, let's say I give this another text of text2. Okay, so now it's going to grab everything. So now we have the first p tag and the second p tag. Well, why is this useful? So we can manipulate anything with the class of text all at once instead of having to go in there and manually grab in an ID. So let's say if we gave these two different IDs, we could not grab all of it by just using get element by ID. We would have to make two separate calls to the DOM. So this is a great way of whenever you're sharing some classes and you want to manipulate them, this is a great way to grab all the HTML elements. And there's more than one way of doing this. And I'll show you the other ways as well. So that's for that. Okay. So on to the next one. So now we have something called query selector. You can grab an ID, HTML tag by itself, class, whatever you want. It's very open. It gives you multiple options. So let's say p is equal to document. Document.querySelector. Okay, so in here we can simply just say p. What this will do is just grab the first p tag. Okay, so now we can also just say give it an ID of text. And this will just grab the first p tag as well. We can do text2 and it'll grab the second one. Now we can also grab it by the class name. But there's one difference here. It's only going to grab one element. That is where query selector all comes in. Query selector is used to grab one HTML tag. Query selector all can grab multiple. So we can say, let's comment this out. We can say p is equal to document.querySelector all. And then we can simply just put p in here and it will grab both the p's. And this is going to be a node list. And I'll explain the little bit of difference between HTML collection and node list. So in a node list, the most important difference you need to know is how to iterate through them. Because that's all we care about, right? If we grab all the HTML tags, we need to loop through them and manipulate them in a certain way, however you want. Let's try to loop through this. So we can use a for each here. And then we can just say tag. And let's just simply console.log the tag. So we get both p tags in our for each loop. Now let's try iterating through this class name. So let's try doing for each tag, and let's just console.log the tag. And this is going to give it an error because an HTML collection is not iterable through for each. If you want to iterate through this, you need to use something called for HTML tag of p. So you need to use a for of loop. So if you just say console.log HTML tag, you'll be able to iterate through both of them. So those are the minor differences. You can also access them like in an array index. So say you have an HTML collection, you only want to access the first one, right? You can just do that, p index 0, and you'll get the first HTML tag. We can also grab an element by class name, but not class name, sorry, just by the name. So we gave a name here, right? Name text. So let's also give this, let's say these both belong in the same name. These names attributes are really common, especially in forms. So let's say you wanted to grab both of them. We can say p is equal to document.get elements by name. And we can simply just say text. Okay, and we get a node list as well. So that means you can iterate it through a for each loop or even a for of if you want as well. So this is a showcase of all the ways you can grab an HTML element from the DOM. So now let's get on to the next thing. I'm going to show you guys how to get the text or HTML from these HTML tags. I'm going to write a comment here saying get inner text and inner HTML. Okay, so let's say document.querySelector, and in here we're going to give the ID of text. Okay, so that should return our first p tag. And I don't know why I keep deleting the console.logs. I need to just keep that. Okay, so in here we're going to simply just say we want the text, right? So we can say inner HTML. Okay, and actually we need to put this inside the console.log. So we get hello world. We can also say inner text. And we also get hello world. So what is the difference here? Well, let's say in our p tag we had a span. Let's give a span here. And let's say span tag. Alright, so now let's say we wanted to use inner text, right? I'm going to refresh and we get span tag inner hello world. Now let's say I used inner HTML. Well, here we're going to get the span tag with the text and hello world. So that's a difference there. With inner HTML, you're going to get, if there's any HTML inside, you're going to get the full HTML. If there's just text, if you just call for text, you're going to just only get the text and ignore all the HTML. So let's say you wanted to change the HTML in there. So I'm going to get rid of this span tag. Let's say you wanted to just change that from hello world to something else. So we can simply just say p.innerText is equal to new text. And it gets replaced. So I'm going to comment this out. And let's say we wanted to actually add HTML with the span tag, and there was some class that we wanted to add to it as well. So we can get rid of this, and we can say p.innerHTML is equal to, we can say span, put test, and we can also add a class or ID, whatever you would like. So test. Okay, so here it won't show the HTML, but it did add the HTML tag here, as you can see, and with the class as well. Cool, so those are the two different ways, the difference between inner text and inner HTML. And I'm also going to write change HTML or text. Okay, so now let's go on to the next thing. Now I'm going to show you guys how to add or remove classes. Now let's go on to the next thing. I'm going to show you guys how to add or remove classes. So now let's write this comment. Okay, so let's say in our p tags we wanted to add a class, and let's say we just wanted to change the color of the text because the user clicked on something, and based on that we want to change the color. So now we can say, let's say change color, and let's make this color just blue. Variable, the HTML tag, document.querySelector, and let's just do the first one. Okay, so let's get the class name of this. Let's see what that returns in the console. Okay, if I open up my console, I just get text, meaning the only class that we have in here is just text. Let's add several more. Let's do HTML, let's say blue, so just some example. So text and HTML and blue. Now that's class name. And let me write a comment here saying class name. There are two different ways you can do this. class name and class list. So we can say console.log p.classList. So this returns a list, and you can access it like an array. So if you wanted to access only the first index, you can just say 0. So what is the difference here? What if you wanted to add or remove a class? Which one would you use? So let's try this one. Now with class name, there's no add or remove functionality. So you would simply have to enter it, give it a string. So let's say we wanted to add it change color, right? Well, what happens now is, let's put this after this so you can see what's happening. What happens now is it completely gets rid of all the other class names and overwrites it with just change color. In most cases, you're not going to want that. So what you want to do when you're adding a class is you want to use a class list. With the class list, you can simply just say p.classList.add, and in here you can say change color. And now it added the change color, and it also kept all the original classes. Same thing with removing. You can do p.ClassList.remove change. Let's do HTML. So in here you can see HTML is no longer in the class. Okay, so those are the different ways of adding and removing classes, and the difference between class name and class list. Most cases I would probably use class list if you're wanting to add or remove classes. Okay, so now let's get on to the topic of hiding and removing HTML classes. So I'm going to just comment all this out. I'm going to copy that, probably need that here, and I'm going to say hide or show HTML tags. Okay, so we have p equal to the first p tag. Now, let's say based on some button being clicked or something like that, we want to hide this p tag. So we can simply, there's many ways you can do this, of course. So we can say p.hidden is equal to true. And we don't need to console anything. And now it removes it. So let's see what happens in the HTML. It just adds an HTML attribute of hidden. This is a super simple way of hiding and showing HTML tags. You can also say false as well, and it'll show it again. So I'm going to comment this out, and there's other ways you can do this. We can also give CSS classes, and we can say display block or hide, which is display none. So here you can say p.ClassList.add hide, and it will hide it. Same thing if you added show and it was already showing, nothing would change. And you can also remove hide, and you can also directly add the styling here itself. So you can say p.style.display is equal to none. If you do that, it's still going to hide it. And if you look here, it's just going to add the inline CSS of display none. And I really advise against that in most cases. You either want to have a class for it, or you want to use a hidden attribute. This isn't bad if you have like one inline CSS, but like one styling. But if you have like a bunch, I really advise against that. Okay, so that's for hiding and showing HTML tags. What's next? I'm going to show you data attributes now. So these are super useful for whenever you want to carry some data around in your HTML tags. So let's say I'm going to just add a data, and let's say you want to have an array in here. Of course, HTML does not know what an array is. We just simply give a string here. In here, we just say 1, 2, 3. And that information is needed for some back-end process or something like that. So let me add a comment here. So data attributes, and let's get the attribute. Let's do document dot get elements, or let's do get element by ID text, and let's get the attribute. So let's create a new variable saying data is equal to p.dataset.array, and let's see what that console is like. If we look here, okay, so it's just a string of a left bracket 1, 2, 3 with commas and a right bracket. So now we want to convert that into an array. So how do we do that? We can simply convert that using json.parse. And now we have an object. It converted to an object, and now we have our array. So if we simply just do that, we'll get the first one. Pretty cool, right? So that is also extremely useful, and I also use it on my day-to-day. So now on to the next thing. I'm going to teach you guys how to create a new HTML element. So we can just say let HTML equal to document.create element. And we're going to create another P tag. Actually, you know what? Let's create an A tag, because I want to show you guys what all you can do with it. And let's create a text node. So a text node is what goes in between the HTML tag and what you want to output to the DOM. So text node is going to be document.create text node. In here, we're going to just say link. Okay, now we're going to append text node to HTML. So we can say append child text node. And instead of doing all this, you could have just put this into here, but it's probably better to create a variable. It's cleaner. So now let's look at what HTML is. HTML is now an A tag with the link output name. Okay, so what would be the next thing we would want to do? Well, for an A tag, it's very important to have a href attribute. So we can simply add attributes by saying html.set attribute. And here we can say the first parameter will be the name of the attribute, which is href, and the second one will be the value. Well, let's just do google.com. Okay, so now we see the href is added. And now let's actually add this to the body. So in order to do that, we simply just say document.append child. And we're not going to want to do that to the body itself. We want to add it to the section. Let's give this section a ID of list. And let's give a variable for section document.getElement by ID list section.append child. So section will be the parent node, and you're going to append your child node, which is HTML in this case, to it. So we're going to simply just say HTML. Okay, so we added our link. If you right click here, it got added below the P tags, which is pretty cool. And in some cases you might need this. So now that's it for creating a new HTML tag. This you can do any HTML tag, image, P tag, div, whatever your wishes, whatever your case is. So now we're going to move on to JavaScript events, and these are really important to know, especially the more popular ones like onclick, onchange. And I'm going to give you an example each and every one of them. So now let's give a comment here saying JavaScript events. Let's do onclick first. Okay, so let's add some buttons here. Let's add it to the top. Let's add 2 buttons. Okay, so the first one, let's do add and remove. Let's give this an ID of add, and this an ID of remove. Okay, so we can simply just say let add btn equal to document dot get element by ID, and we can just say add. So now we have the access to the add button. We can say add btn dot on click. So if you do dot, you can see all these events here that are usable, which is a lot. Okay, so we're going to say dot on click equal to, you can set it to a function like this, or you can just give it a name of a function and call that function somewhere else, or have that function definition somewhere else. So you can simply just say add to list, and then you can have a function definition here called add to list. Well, for now I'm just going to have an anonymous function. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to add something to this list. So we just talked about creating a new HTML element, right? We're going to implement that here, and we'll kind of connect it to. So we're going to say let HTML equal to document.create element, and we're just going to simply create another p tag, and let's say let text node equal to document.create text node, and here we're going to say text3. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is now we want to just simply append a child to the section. So I'm going to copy this section right here. I'm going to put it in here, and we can simply just say section.append child is equal to HTML. And I forgot to append the text node to the HTML. So append HTML.append child text node. Okay, let's see what happens when we add. So now we're getting all these text. Cool. So now what if we want to add the text number, the number here, based on how many elements there are already existing? So what we can do there is very simple, actually. So I'm going to say create another variable here and say num, and we're going to say document.query selector all p. Okay, so here we can say text plus num dot length plus 1, and this needs to go in parentheses. Okay, so now if I hit add, we should get text 3, text 4, text 5, text 6, 7. Cool. So I just wanted to show you a basic use case of using query selector all. I mean, you would probably never use it like this, but it's just an example. Now let's do remove. So here we can say remove btn is equal to document.getElementById remove. I believe that's what I called it. Yep. And we'll do the same thing, and now we're going to remove all of our remove everything from the list when the remove button is clicked. So whenever it's clicked, we are going to remove one item at a time. So we can say dot on click is equal to function. Okay, so let's see how we're going to remove this. So first thing what we want to do is have an edge case here. If there's no items in the list and we cannot remove anything, we'll get an error. So what we want to do is let num equal to document.query selector all. And let's say, they are not all p tags, right? Well, in this case they are, but maybe they're not going to be always p tags. Then what you would want to do in your add functionality is definitely add a common class between all of them. So for now, we're going to assume they're all p tags. Okay. So we're going to say if num.length is equal to 0, we're going to say alert cannot remove any more from the list. Okay, just a small edge case. Now we're going to just copy this. Okay. In here we can say section.remove child. Okay, so now we want to remove the last one, the latest one that was included. So the way we can do that is, it's very simple. So we can say let last p equal to document dot query selector all. Okay, we already have that here, right? We don't need to use it again. So let's give this a better name. Let's do p tags. We don't need to call this again. All we need to do is, in here we need to say p tag, and we need to give the last index. The way to do that is saying p tags.length -1. Okay, so let's try that. If we do remove, it removes, and now it should say cannot remove any more from the list. So we can add, and we can remove now. What is this? Oh, it's gonna, the reason why we got that console error is because we probably would want to put this in an else statement. Okay, so now if we removed, we wouldn't get any console error. Okay guys, so I want to show you guys two more events. One is onchange. So I'm going to completely get rid of this HTML. And I'm going to have an input here of type text. And below it, I'm going to have a p tag. And it's just going to have an ID of input text. So what I want to do here is simply, anytime this gets typed in, we're going to use an onchange event. So anytime this gets changed, we're going to just simply output it below. Okay, so now I'm going to just comment this all out. And I'm going to create a comment here saying onchange event. And we can simply just do that by saying, let's do let input equal to document dot query selector. And we can just say input dot onchange is equal to function. Okay, so anytime this gets changed, what we're going to do is let p, let me see, make sure p's, okay, p's already declared up here. So we can just say p equal to document dot get element by ID, and I give it an ID of input text. Okay, so anytime this gets changed, we're going to say p.inner HTML. It probably would be better to use inner text here. Input.value. Okay, let's try it out. Cool. So notice how this works. So if I type something and then I click out of it, then it'll call the onchange event. So let's have some edge case here. So the user typed in something into the form and they erased it. Well, let's have a case here. If it's blank onchange, meaning they typed in something and then they removed it, let's give it a border of red saying this needs to be filled. Okay, so the way we can do that is if, let's do that, yeah, if input.value is equal to empty string, we can say input.style.border, and I would always recommend having a custom class for this in your CSS file, but we're just going to give inline CSS for this tutorial. We can say 2 pixels solid red. So let's try it. And if it's not empty, we'll just display the text in the p tag below it. Okay, and now we clear it out, and it's gonna show the red border text. Sorry, just a red border, and we probably want to clear the p tag every single time, so we can simply just say p.innerText. You can have this in an if statement too. If p.innerText is not equal to empty, just clear it. Or if it is equal to empty, don't do anything. If it's not empty, just clear it out. So we can do that, remove it, and it removes it. Alright guys, I want to finish off this tutorial with showing you one last thing, which is add event listeners. This is really important because there'll be cases where you might have, let's say, 3 different buttons or something that's, needs a event listener, like say onclick in this case, right? And we're going to give it a class of btn. Oh, I meant to say btn. And for some reason you're not able to manipulate this class or ID or give it individual classes. Well, if you needed onclick events for all 3 of these buttons, the easiest way would be to add an event listener using a for loop. Or you can add an onclick event to each and every single one of them, which would take a long time if you had a large number of buttons in this case. So an easy way to do this is saying p is equal to document.querySelector all. This will grab all the buttons, okay? And then we can say p.forEach function callback, and here we're going to give a tag. Okay, so in this loop we're going to say tag.add event listener click. So anytime this gets clicked, this event listener, so an event listener is attached to these buttons now. In this function, what we're going to do, the callback, we will just console.log this. So let's say I click on 1. Okay, so it knows exactly which button was clicked. So for example, say you had a list of items and they were all clickable. This is a great way of doing this instead of manually putting the onclick in here, or having a onclick event manually like the way we did here, like add btn, remove btn, like that. This would be a great solution for having a case like this. So this is all I wanted to show you for this intro video. I hope you guys learned something and got a good basis of what the JavaScript DOM is all about, and you can use this in your personal projects or at work or wherever you guys are. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Bye bye.